And we're live, Doug.
Let's go.
How you doing?
I'm doing well, dude. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy you're here as well. I feel like this has been a long time in the works. Not that we've been trying to put it together, but I've kind of been. It's been in the back of my mind for a while that we should probably do this. And the other day on the Bitcoin magazine, Bitcoin magazine live stream, I was like, yeah, it's about time to do this now.
Well, fucking A, dude. Thanks. I'm honored for that. And yeah, man, I've been listening to your pod for a solid year now, and I'm like, man, dude, one day I'm gonna talk to John and it's gonna be fucking cosmic.
Well, let's break into it, baby. Why waste any time? Yeah, I've had the same feeling, man. So, just for context from myself and also anybody listening, why don't we hear the backstory? How'd you get involved in all this magic internet money stuff?
Yeah, so my story starts the end of 2017, around the end of November. I'm basically one of those guys that heard number go up, and I think Bitcoin had just broken 10K. I don't know, I was hearing it all over the news or something. I forget exactly what my final touch was when I fully jumped in, but I remember coming home and I was just hearing about it on the news or something, and I was chilling with my cousin, and I asked him, he's younger than me too, and I asked him like, "Yo, have you heard about this Bitcoin thing?" And he was like, "Dude, you know what? I think I might have some," because he was one of those young kids that was, using dark markets and stuff. And I'm like, man, like, what the fuck? My cousin has Bitcoin. Like, I need to get into this. And within like an hour of watching a few YouTube videos, like Andreas Antonopoulos videos, I was just hooked, and I signed up to Coinbase, and I think I threw like a $50 or $100 at it, and I just haven't popped out of the rabbit hole since.
Right, right. So what was, that's an interesting time to come into it, right? Because there's so much frenzy around it. And I mean, I remember that time. And even as I guess I like to consider myself as level-headed, but like almost nobody is immune from that type of frenzy. And I kind of thought like this was it. Like the world is changing over to this stuff now. Like this is the moment where it changed. Like part of me felt it was a bubble too, but nothing is more compelling than the market, right? Because it's literally everybody voting with their resources and their money that something is real and it's happening. And then of course, we know what happened in Feb of 2018. What was your sentiment as a, relative noob coming in at the heights and then experiencing the lows?
Oh, dude, I was so green. I was just a greedy noob and was like, dog, I'm about to get rich over here. And then, like within a few weeks, I was hearing. So I think within like a week or two, I jumped on Twitter, and then I basically, got caught in the shitcoin net and heard, like Bitcoin's MySpace, and Bitcoin's slow, and all that good stuff. And so I was watching the shitcoin markets, and they were just going green. Like everything was just popping. And I'm like, holy shit, like I can throw $100 on all this shit and make a bunch of money. And so I just, got caught up in that greed frenzy. It's like I wrote one time, like Bitcoin has a way of domesticating your greed. And so
Nice.
it took a while for me to fully like understand the Bitcoin philosophy and that point of view. So within like 3 or 4 months, I, was completely disillusioned by the shitcoin market because it had already crashed by then. And so I was sitting there and, like trying to hodl shitcoins, and it was literally like making me go insane. I was just like going mad. I was losing money. I was like depressed, and I didn't even know it yet. I was like broken mentally, but I just stuck around and just like had fun on Twitter and just started shit posting. And the more I stuck around and the more I was able to filter through, all the noise on Twitter, then I started to find, the signal through it all. And I just kept following basically a lot of like asshole Bitcoiners, asshole maxis, and these guys just like spitting truth without any remorse for anyone. Just kind of it was like one of those things where like, well, these guys don't give a fuck, but they seem to be, like they don't seem to be lying, and they seem to be having a good point of view. And so I just kind of kept following that trail and would just study and listen to like Marty Bent and Stefan Livera and Pierre Richard and Bitstein on, their podcasts. I would just, be working like 8 hours a day and just be listening to podcasts all day because it was just like calling me. I was like, man, like there's something here. I need to figure it out. And I just spent hours listening to podcasts and reading books and, shit posting. And I don't know, somehow I popped that on this side.
Yeah, well, I was gonna, maybe you just answered it, but I was gonna ask because, well, like, was there a moment? I think everyone, or the vast majority of people that get involved or got involved in kind of mid 2017, it's so hard not to be pulled in by just the greed of 10xing your wealth in like a month or less, And I think that that really got a lot of people. And then, as you mentioned, the kind of despondent feeling, or dejected, depressed feeling, a few months later when everything tanks. And then I think there was a brief bump in, I think, everything in like May of 2018. Like Bitcoin went back up to 10 and altcoins were kind of climbing again. And then just another massacre down. Um, that's tough. And, I think a lot of people probably resonate with that feeling. I think it's awesome. A lot of people often talk about, Bitcoin is a wealth transfer to fill in the blank, like wealth transfer to the curious or wealth transfer to whatever. But, you mentioned not being turned away by these seeming dickheads on Twitter who, even though they were a bit brash and abrasive, seemed to be like the arguments that they were making seemed to hold up, seemed to be, you know, uh, like worthy of at least listening to and engaging in. And I find it interesting that, you could almost say that Bitcoin is also a wealth transfer to like the thick skinned or people that aren't overly sensitive, because those are the ones that hung around to like mix it up with those maxis and maybe get smacked around a bit, maybe get told you're a fool, or maybe you just hung out on the sidelines, but you're still like, nah, there's something here. There's got to be something here. So, I just love how Bitcoin, to us now, it seems so goddamn obvious, but I love how to most people, especially in the mainstream, it doesn't seem obvious. So all the kind of little quirks about people that make them, whatever it is, whether it's curiosity or thick skin or rebelliousness or whatever, that just makes them hang around and be like, hold on a fucking second. Like, what the fuck, what's going on here? And they hang, if you hang around enough, you start to see the truth. And, I love that it's playing out that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it was a little bit of all that. Like, with my friends in real life, we're just kind of a lot of shit talkers. Like that's all we do is we basically make fun of each other and talk a lot of shit. And if you get your feelings hurt, then you're not really going to be hanging out with us. And not that that's like the best thing to do, but that's just what we do. And so I kind of just got that vibe from Twitter, but on a more like intellectual, level of like, this is war out here on Twitter. I think Giacomo said it, where it's like it's a battleground of ideas. And like if your ideas can't hold up to the scrutiny, then it's not a good idea. And so I don't know, something inside of me just was like, all right, well, these guys just don't give a fuck, and they're telling it as it is, or so I thought, and I didn't understand it then. I would read bits and pieces here and slowly start to like accumulate the perspective of understanding Bitcoin. And at first, a lot of the things I read, I was like, it was way over my head. Like, this Bitcoin world is a whole new like arena of knowledge for me. And I just dude, honestly, I can't even explain it anymore. I'm just like, one day I was like, man, all this shit, I don't get it at all. And then 3 months later is like, oh wait, I think I get it. It's like the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you're like, oh, I understand this. And then the pit of despair, you're like, I have no idea what they're talking about. And then, a couple months later, you're like, oh, I think I kind of get it. And now I'm at the point where like I grasp enough to where I'm convinced, and I'm willing to put, where my or put my money where my mouth is. And so, like I'm an avid stacker, and like Bitcoin's changed my life, man. Like you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. And like I'm grateful to, all of our friends and Bitcoin, because like I'm a completely different person, and I've only been in this space for like 2.5 years, but the growth I've seen in myself is just like, it's a transformation. And I'm just so grateful for this, that like I'm willing to put my name on the line, and like my money on the line. And I'm an evangelist with my friends about it, but I'm at the point now where they're all like, just shut up. Like, we don't want to hear this anymore. So I just, I pick my battles, but I'm still constantly like, hey, Bitcoin fixes this, but you're not listening to me. So hey, you'll understand which number goes up, man.
Yeah, that's so true, dude. And like e- every one of us, the vast majority of us are in the same situation, right? You dip your toes in, it's interesting, it hooks on, a particular level enough for you to hang around, and then your conviction just strengthens over time to the point where like I've been in the space, I think since like 15 or 14 or 15. And like you think you get to a level where you can't possibly be more convicted. And then the more you learn, you're just like, fuck, like it happened. Like I leveled up again. But with your friends and stuff, it's so crazy because it's one of those things that when it becomes crystal clear to you and you see what it is, what it represents, what the potential for it is, and you have those like orange coated glasses that you see the world through, and things become so clear that when we're, especially in a climate like today with everything that's popping off, when those conversations come up, and they come up so damn often, you want to be like, guys, like, I hate to say it, but what I'm gonna say. And it's fascinating to me. I guess it's a lack of curiosity in most people because the vast majority of people kind of, if they're like polite and kind and open to input from everybody, then they're like, yeah, interesting, cool, next. Whereas, or most people just kind of outright dismiss it, and it's I don't know if it's hubris or lack of curiosity or what, but it's really strange how Bitcoin seems to select like us, because like we're all probably the Bitcoin guy or girl in our social group, right? Like why us? Why uniquely the life experiences or the perspective that we each have that draws us to it, you know?
Dude, honestly, I don't even know. I think about that so much because, like for a while I didn't consider myself special. I didn't feel like I had any more knowledge than anyone else. I was just like an average dude. Yeah, I basically, as like American Hot always says, like I would hide my smartness and I just like play dumb with all my friends. And yet like at night I'm like a nerd. I read and I study, and I was a philosopher in college, so my friends would always consider me a philosopher, and they'd come to me for like deep thought and all that stuff. And now I'm just like, man, I have no idea, but I was like born for this. It just like, my life has led me to this point, and like I'm really trying not to take it for granted, because it's like I realize how like cool and how fucking awesome this space is, and just that like I'm at the front row of it and I'm watching this all happen in real time, and it just blows me away. And fucking I have no idea, man. It's just like it's easy to say we were just born for this. I don't know. Our life has just led us to this point, and we're the Bitcoin people around in our neighborhood, and in time, we'll usher them into the space.
So true, man. I mentioned, I said on Twitter the other day that it was like Bitcoin compelling people to alter the course of their lives since 2009. And it's like, as you said, you were always a thoughtful, curious, maybe nerdy person. I would characterize myself the same way, very inquisitive about a wide variety of things. And I get the sense that a lot of Bitcoiners were like that, not accepting of, the traditional narratives or what you find in mainstream media, academia, etc., and always sensing that there could be something more, even if it didn't exist at the time. And also kind of in the background, at least this was my case, and I get the sense it was for many others, like still kind of sharpening your knives, like trying to be um, you know, trying your best to be put together, but kind of lacking that focal piece that brought all, your energy, attention, focus, and disciplines together and gave it, a true kind of purpose, like a reason to express it with vigor. And I have a lot of these conversations, as you know, and it's almost universal that people kind of say that, like, varying degrees of hopelessness given the nature of the situation in the world today prior to stumbling upon Bitcoin. But a lot of these people were like that. They were, they were extremely inquisitive, curious, rejecting of the mainstream narrative, but not having really a place to direct that energy other than just kind of keep filling up your brain in anticipation for, and hoping and praying that there is a solution, an alternative that emerges. And in many cases, probably not even believing that Bitcoin was that at the beginning, because it's really easy to dismiss. And then if you're, maybe stroke of fate, or you're determined and you hang around long enough to see it in greater complexity or understand, what it really is in more detail, then it hooks you. And then I feel like just all that energy and focus that was disparate before just gets laser focused on that. And as a result of that, it's very difficult to orient your life around anything else, because that thing now has so much meaning and gravity and space for you to explore and express through, that it's like you kind of got to at least alter your life a bit to accommodate for that.
Oh, dude, 100%. I grew up and I was kind of a conspiracy theorist when I was in my teens. And so I've always had that feeling of there's something wrong with the system, there's something wrong with our society, but not knowing what it was. And then I found Bitcoin, and when I first heard about it, well, not when I first heard about it, because I think I first heard about it around like Silk Road times.
Yeah, me
But
too.
I was like, yeah, like I can buy weed in my neighborhood. Like I'm cool. Like I don't
Exactly.
need internet nerd money. Like I'm good.
Yeah.
But yeah, finally when I found it in like 2017, it's like I say, like life was getting tough. I was broke, and I was like, shit, like I can make money here. And then that was my first thought. And the more I studied, it was like, holy shit, like everything, well, not everything, but a lot of things that I grew up believing wasn't actually a conspiracy theory. Like it wasn't just fake news, it's real shit, and just most people didn't get it, or weren't trying to understand it. And so just the deeper I started to learn about Bitcoin, the more, my convictions would grow in it, and I'd be like, wow, like I've known this for decades at this point, and like there's a solution to all this, and it's called Bitcoin. And like, all right, I just need to, buy as much as I can, stack as much as I can, sacrifice as much as I can, and just keep learning, and just keep growing, and like you said, like, better myself through the process. Because you know putting money into Bitcoin's one thing, but this whole journey, it's like the hero's journey of, you start at one part of the journey, and by the end you're transformed into something else, and you have completely different behaviors and points of view of the world, and you look back at yourself and you're like, wow, like I'm a totally different person, and it's all revolved around Bitcoin.
Mm.
Back to our boy Hodl, it's like Bitcoin is true north. It's like it's something that you can build upon. It's a foundation for a better society, and better humans. And just like, I think I'm so adamant about, excuse me, so adamant about Bitcoin, because like I've seen the transformation in myself, and if it can happen for me, then it can happen for anyone else that's just as obsessed as we are. And like I'm no different than any other person. I see an opportunity, and I see something great happening, and I'm just diving, head first. Like, let's just go all in, and fuck it. I'm young enough where if it doesn't turn out to be what I think it is, well, I have time, and I've built skills and habits to, be a better person in the long run. But I'm pretty damn convinced that like we're right. And so let's fucking go.
Yeah, man. I mean, the more humble side of all of us, and the future is entirely is not certain, right? So you have to say, like, sure, there's a possibility we're wrong, and this will fail, or maybe we're right and it'll still fail, or whatever. But like, I always just think through the lens of, even if that turns out to be the case, like, will you be able to live with yourself, not having, given it a shot, not having given it its full kind of attempt, when what we know it represents was on the table. When that was on the table, when what it did for the individual and what it represented for, you know, the kind of the collective that could be built atop that foundation that you refer to, it's so beautiful and positive that, you know, will you look back and tell your grandkids that, like, you know, you didn't really you didn't put your energy behind that, you didn't try to make that happen, like you'd be okay with that? Maybe some people would be, but for me, like, I don't know what the quote is, something about like I'd rather fail gloriously than you know, never attempt at all. And again, like you said, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to be right, and that's going to be way sweeter. But yeah, man. And all that being said, even if we're wrong, I mean, look at the type of people you get to mix it up with in this space, right? Like whether it's on Twitter, on these pods, whatever, like these are good people. These are, you know, people, everyone's different and it's awesome and everyone's from different places. But, you know, my interactions in this space have been, minus a couple fuckheads on Twitter, it's been like universally positive. And it's incredible, you know, even if it goes to shit, I'm sure this group of people will figure out a way to do something else cool together.
Fuck yeah, dude. You just gave me the chills. And dude, I'm like I'm blown away half the time that, you know, I'm respected as a peer with everyone around here, because it's like everyone's like the smartest, fucking coolest, you know, craziest people I've ever met. But they, you know, they're not like crazy like my friends are crazy, you know, like they're just like degenerates, but like I love them. You know, they're fucking crazy smart, and they understand things that I'm just like, wow, you guys blow me away. And man, like, yeah, like I say it all the time, like I'm bullish on all of us, you know, I'm bullish on Bitcoiners, and like no matter what, Bitcoiners are going to do some dope shit, whether we have another name by the time, you know, that Bitcoin is ushered in, or if it doesn't. The people around here are going to do some dope ass shit. And I'm just like, you know, just trying to survive this whole time and be like, all right, dude, like how can I add value? Like what are my skills going to be best put to use? And, you know, I'm just trying to figure it out and become a better person. And it's like, man, just like we've said in the Taco Pleb group, like pleb sharpens pleb, you know, steel sharpens steel. And
Yeah.
so like the more I'm around all, you know, all of our friends, the more I'm like, all right, man, you know, it's like the what's the saying? Like you're the accumulation of the 6 people or the most people you're around.
Yeah, the average of the 5 people you spend the most time
Yeah,
with or
yeah,
something. Yeah.
exactly. And it's like, man, you know, I'm spending my time with the smartest people, in my opinion, in most of the world, you know. And so the fact that I can just have this little peek, you know, little peek hole into these conversations and these perspectives, it's like, man, I'm I'm gonna be so straight in the future. Like it's just, you just like got to keep going, dude. It's like what I tell myself all the time, like just stay disciplined, stay persistent, where you'll be fucking, you'll be good, bro. Just like you'll be all right. Just keep going. And you know, because I'm not, like, I'm not gonna lie, I still have my fucking my problems and shit in life that I beat myself up about. But the more I just fucking keep going at it, and I just, you know, buckle down and fucking just get stronger, like internally build my inner strength, the more I'm like, all right, man, like none of this even matters. Like you're fucking, you've already got it. You're, yeah, like I'm fucking, I'm just so straight. I'm so excited for this. It's like, I'm like, I'm like grabbing the bull by the horns, and like, I'm finally able to like look out into the world and be like, all right, like I can conquer my little corner, and no longer being timid or like insecure about it. I'm like, man, like I'm fucking here. You know, like no one can take it away from me. It's like the saying, a man is whatever room he's in. And in my opinion, like we're in the best fucking room that there is on planet Earth, or on our corner of Twitter. And fucking like, let's go, boys. Let's get it.
But and I like everything you just said resonates with me. And if, like, of course, everyone's still got their shit. Like, just because you're into Bitcoin doesn't mean it solves all your life's problems. But as you kind of articulated, uh, it mixing it up with this quality of people around such a profound entity that is Bitcoin, like you're just, as you say, pleb sharpens pleb. Like you you can't help but want to raise yourself to the level of your peers, especially those that you admire and respect the most, right? So like your peers are like crazy intellectuals or technologists or economists and stuff like that on Twitter, and you're like, you don't want to be the idiot that doesn't understand this stuff, and you don't want to be the idiot that's incapable of capitalizing on this, and you don't want to be the idiot that can't hold a conversation with so and so. So you're everyone in this space is just frantically filling up their mind, assessing their lives, their bodies, and trying to make those improvements. And like what you're telling me just now, like you've been in this space for 2.5 years, right? Which is in terms of how long it typically takes for like people to have relatively profound change in their lives, like that ain't a long time. And so like as a thoughtful person and as someone who studied philosophy, and I love talking about this subject, partly because there's no really right answer, and I'm sure we're not even close to scratching the surface yet. But like, what other forces do you think are at play in, like you articulated a lot of the ways that you've changed as a person. What are the forces at play that you think are inspiring those changes?
Oh man, fuck. That's a deep one. Um, I
That's why
don't.
we're here, boy.
Yeah, I fuck. I can't. I don't even know. I'm just like, I'm team human. I've always just seen or believed in the good in humans. And even though we're at the point where we see, a small group of people that may be, fucking it all up for the rest of us, I think there's more good than bad in the world. And people are more confused than ever. And so having something that we can all grasp, having some sort of ultimate truth, which is Bitcoin, something we can all collectively agree on and be like, okay, like this is the way. We've all came to this same agreement differently, but we have a Schelling point that is Bitcoin, and it's just like a force of nature. And as someone that kind of started philosophy as like a from the Socratic sense of like, I know that I know nothing. Now that I like, okay, I know one thing is fucking working and one thing is right in this world, and it's the fact that Bitcoin's been here for a decade. And maybe it's just simple economics that, humans are greedy and they're going to be, do what's in their best self-interest. And what's in their best self-interest is the stack sats. And so, like humans in very much a lot of ways are predictable, like the Pavlovian dog experiments and stuff, like you give humans good incentives and they most likely will, make the right choices and all that. And so I just believe, like Bitcoin is just has a way of taking over your brain. It's like how I forget who said it, but it's like a psychedelic at a certain point where it's you take this Bitcoin drug and it takes a little while for it to saturate your brain. And then after a while, you're just like a complete lunatic about it. And you're just telling everyone, like, you need this in your life. Like, can you see what I see? Like, it's right here in front of you, bro. Like there's more to life than this. And so, yeah, like I've personally in my life is just one of those persons that has felt that there's more to life and there's more to what we know. And it leads me to, to seek. Like I'm a seeker, hence like my tag, my living truth. And my little thing is like, it's not the truth, it's just some of mine. And so I've always been someone that just try to understand an ultimate truth. Like in philosophy, I always just wanted to understand the nature of reality. And I was wishing
Small
for
small
like,
thing like that.
yeah, exactly. Nothing big. Like I was hoping for, like one conclusive theory on, life and reality when I was 17, 18, something that I can, hold on to. And no matter all the bullshit going in life, I could hold on to this, perspective of being, okay, this is the ultimate truth and no one can shake me from that. And if I could have that pillar and that foundation, then the rest of my life will go pretty smooth. And then you slowly realize, well, like, yeah, that's not going to happen, like, and no one on earth knows what the hell they're doing. They're just all, good fakers and making educated guesses and, like having confidence in whatever little knowledge they've acquired and fucking like Bitcoin is that. I don't know, like to me personally, like Bitcoin is more than just money. It's like a cultural change, and it's just slowly working its way through humans, by an individual peer-to-peer basis. And in time, people will start to see that reality, and that maybe the view that we have about society isn't, the right perspective. It's like, as modern humans and modern man, we're very convinced that we have all the answers, and we're a lot smarter than our ancestors, and all that good stuff. But in my mind, I've always kind of felt that, like, knowledge moves in cycles, and in our ancient past, maybe we understood some things about human nature and about life better than we do now. But at this current moment, we may have lost some of those things, and now we probably understand, certain things about reality and nature that our ancient ancestors couldn't even comprehend. And so we're just like moving towards, I don't know if you'd call it like the singularity or what have you, but I truly believe that the reason for living and the reason for all this game we call life is to get to that ultimate point of self mastery, or some might call it like Christ mode or what have you, Christ consciousness, where
Enlightenment, whatever.
yeah, exactly. Whatever the term is, like I truly believe that as a society and as a human, that's where you're moving towards, is, at the end of the day, like, we'll know what this game of life is. And like, there's good and evil in the world, and that's just the way it is. But someday, maybe, like, I kind of fall into the reincarnation camp as well. So like, I definitely believe that at some point in the ever after, or in the here and now, that we'll understand what this game of life is, and life begets life begets life, and it's just all part of that learning journey. And I think Bitcoin's part of that. It's like we say, the second renaissance is coming. Like, I truly believe that Bitcoin will help us usher in this sci-fi future that we've dreamt of back in the day. And it's just going to take time, and we just need some patience and some understanding as humans to get there. And man, like, it's gonna be a crazy ride, but like, here we are. And like,
Totally.
it's
I spoke with Brandon Quittem yesterday, and we we're both very much interested in psychedelics as well. And we talked about, in particular, because you mentioned like you just want to come out and shake somebody's face and be like, do you realize what experience is available to you?
yep.
And like there's so much overlap between the psychedelic experience and Bitcoin, just because that's when you get Bitcoin, when you get fully orange pilled, when you see the light, like you want to do the same thing. You want to go and tell everybody. But man, there's so much that you just said that resonates so strongly with my experience. Like just always being, always having been like a seeker, as you said, and thinking that like there's more to the pursuit of life than accumulating wealth and status, and having the house and the car and the dog and the kids. All that is awesome, and all it's, I think it's very important. But yeah, I was always like, just you have that itch, that there's something more. And probably like even at a young age, I was reading all the books I could get my hands on that kind of tried to address the mysteries of the human condition, or the mysteries of the world we find ourselves in. And I've could not studied deeply, but read up somewhat on ancient cultures from various parts of the world, and in particular, like the earliest ancient ones, because those ones seem to be um, not even, of course, they're primitive in certain ways, like you were saying, like we do things and we have certain understandings these days that they couldn't possibly comprehend. But also, I totally agree with your sentiment that when you were saying they had a level of they had wisdom as well that we seem to have forgotten, and that we probably would benefit from reintegrating into the human culture today. I think McKenna addresses that to some degree, referring to it as an archaic revival, like bringing back some of the some of the wisdom from the disparate cultures back then. And I think about places like ancient India, like your kind of Mohenjo-daro sort of areas, where it seemed like a very peaceful and prosperous civilization. And what would it be like? And you can read accounts or interpret writing from that time, and it was like a very spiritual oriented society. And I'm not saying that's what I want or that we need today, but it was always fascinating for me to cast my mind's eye or try to cast my mind's eye back to those times and think like, what kind of a society would it be when kind of the highest ideal or achievement or attainment was actually a spiritual attainment rather than a physical or material attainment? Because I think we could broadly characterize Western culture today as idolizing material attainment or material achievement, being wealthy, for lack of a better term, which is cool. Don't get me wrong. I love money. But it's created around that a certain culture, or maybe it's the result of a certain culture. But what would it have been like when, the whole culture and everyone who was striving was kind of striving towards that end? I think it would have been a really cool experience. And I think Bitcoin is part of a foundation that may not elucidate that exact thing, but I do think we bring more like truth and wisdom back into and reintegrate it, and possibly bring back some of the incredibly rich wisdom and practices and techniques from our distant past back into modern culture and mix it all up and form it on the basis of this mechanism that allows us to interact on a far more even, fair playing field, i.e. the money that we use. And I'm super excited for what that looks like. And, maybe we end up being too early to really see it in its, in its glory. But, if I was to ask myself, would you rather be there at the beginning or after it's had some time to unfold? And I kind of think the beginning, man, because it's just too exciting to see it unfold in real time.
Yeah. I would agree with you. I definitely for probably from my late teens until just a few years ago was like kind of trying to do that like spiritual seeking in the modern world, and would try to live a minimal life and like just seek the higher truths or what have you, or like believe in that one day the philosopher king will rule and reign and all that good stuff. And so I definitely, understand that we live in a materialistic world now, and you kind of can't get away from it. And so when you start talking about, spiritual things, quote unquote, you get looked at as crazy, or you get laughed at or what have you. But I definitely believe that now, especially now, considering what's going on like in current events, you can kind of see how spiritually drained a lot of people are, and they're seeking something, but they don't understand what they're seeking. And the only way that they can, get it out is by destroying things, or basically, just devolving into animalistic behaviors. And so I definitely agree with you that Bitcoin in some sense will bring back like the spiritual side of man, like I can't fully articulate it, but it's like a left brain right brain thing, like we're so materialistic right now that the pendulum will soon start swinging backwards, or to the other side, and we'll be like, okay, it's not all about the material world, and there's more to this life than just the material world. And now how do we balance that, and how do we walk the middle path, like the narrow path? And I think that's what Bitcoiners are doing, like the stoic philosophy that we have seemed to all like align ourselves around, of being disciplined and eating well, and like and also like drinking well, and like enjoying life as much as you are like a hermetic freaking cave dweller. You gotta find that balance in your own life where it's like, okay, it's not all about the material, and it's not all about just renouncing everything, and like not eating and like living out in the street to stack as many sets as possible. There's a fine line of like, okay, I need to sacrifice and I need to be disciplined, but I also am trying to enjoy my life. And so like, yeah, like I hope one day if I'm blessed enough to live long enough that I have a family and like the white picket fence dream, the American dream, all that. But like at the same time, I think I'm with you, like this journey right now is like, I wouldn't take it back because like this is the moment I'm living and, like be here now. Like this is my life. This is where I'm at this point in time, and I'm just trying to be as present and as awake through this whole experience as I can be,
Hmm.
even though there's times where I go out and I just get fucking bum drunk with my friends and I'm like, like fucking hedonistic lifestyle. So but like there's a fine balance of trying to walk that razor's edge of like, okay, there's more to this life, and yet I have Bitcoin as well. And so I'm trying to wrap my head around that understanding of like, how can I live in the material world, but also be disciplined and like understand that like there's more to this life, and this is just the beginning of it. It's like I feel I'm in my third decade now, and I'm like, all right, like I just feel like I just woke up and I'm just starting to understand this life. And I've been fucking around for like way too long, and
Yeah.
I'm at the point where it's like, okay, you got to grow up a little bit. You got to figure some shit out. You can't be just this child, this grown man, like, and you got to do some grown man things. And part of this right now is just, it's like we all say, like you you hold your bitcoins for when you want to use them. And so in the meantime, it's just like keep working hard and keep mastering yourself, and keep going on the path that is the right path, and listening to your inner voice and all that good stuff, and starting to understand your intuition better, instead of like, instead of believing other people know what's best for you, you can start to forge your own path and be okay with the mob ridicule and all that good stuff. And that just comes back to like the hero's journey. At a certain point, you're going to be walking this path alone, but if you're true to yourself, like you'll get the riches that you've always wanted, and you'll get what's yours. And so I'm just at that point now, and like I'm grateful to be talking to fucking the OG John Vallis. Like this is honestly like, this is kind of one of the like, it's like as corny as it sounds, it's like manifesting things that I remember months ago. I'm like, man, dude, like I'm gonna get on the pod with John, and I don't know when it is, but like I'm gonna get on there and it's gonna be fucking dope as fuck, and it's gonna be super cosmic. Because like I just listen to you guys get cosmic. I'm like, dude, like these are my people. Like
I should be in on these conversations.
yeah, exactly. Like, like, dude, I should be here. Like, these are my people. Like, like, and here I am. And so it's part of that. Like, you have more inner strength than you understand, and especially as a Bitcoiner, or one of our friends that understands Bitcoin as well as we do. In our own varying degrees. It's like you understand something that many people in the world don't, and it's not going to be easy for us to get to the promised land of hyper bitcoinization, but like the journey will be worth it. And it's like the corniest of all corny sayings. It's like, it's not the destination, it's a journey. But it's so true, because it's you get caught up in like, what will tomorrow bring? But then you realize like, man, today's like pretty damn good. Like, yesterday wasn't like today is, and yesterday I hope for today. And so I'm just, it's like my friend Neil Ronan, I think it's Ronan Bitcoin, I forget his that tag, but you got to find your Bitcoin Zen. And when you find that Bitcoin Zen, you like everything else, it doesn't really matter, because you're in that Zen moment, you're in that Zen perspective of like, okay, man, like life is good. Like I'm straight, I'll make it through anything. And, test me, like life, you can test me now, because I'm going to fucking come out OG. Like, I'm going to come out the Phoenix, like throw me to the wolves and I'm going to come back its leader. And fucking
Yeah,
like, let's go, man.
man, it's I love all that, and there's so many times, there's so many things I want to address. I probably forget most of them, but it on the last point there, it's like a change in perspective where you go from, and look, there's exceptions to everything, obviously, but in the context of, what you just said, and I totally agree, you go from kind of life challenges and the uncertainty of life being kind of like obstacles that you kind of lament. You're like, oh man, like why the fuck is that in my way now? Why
Yep.
the fuck is that in my way? To uh, just kind of training. You're like, oh, like
Yep.
that obstacle's there now. All right, it sucks. Let's meet it, move forward, and I'll be even better on the other side of it. Like you've got this attractor pulling you forward now, and that's such a powerful thing. And and to go way back to what you were saying about drinking and stuff, like I still do that too. It's just, of course, we're here to enjoy life as well,
Yeah.
right? But I
Yeah.
think a lot of us prior, that kind of sense of aimless wandering and or
Yep.
hopelessness that many of us experienced as a result of looking out on the world and being like, man, I used to say the quote a lot back in the day. It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a sick society. I can't remember who said it. It
Ooh.
might have been, I don't think it was Krishnamurti, but it could have been. But anyways, um, because I felt that. I felt like we were in a sick society and there was a hopelessness attached to that because I didn't see how to get out of it. And to the point about spirituality, I think, at least it was my experience, I probably went a little bit too far in that direction because I didn't see any solutions in the material world. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to put all my eggs in the spiritual basket. I'm going to have to try to find resolution in that domain because I don't seem to be able to find it in the physical realm. And Bitcoin emerges on the scene, and it changes that. It brings you back. The pendulum swings a bit further back this way. Like, oh no, you can do something about it now. Like the material world can change, and so that brings you back. And I probably, in terms of drinking, back in the day, certainly for a period of time, it was definitely, part of it was due to that hopelessness, that due to that kind of looking out on the horizon and being at the very least apathetic, if not downright, um, you know, uh, pessimistic about it, right? And then and so that's not good. That's not good if you're basically medicating from that perspective or with that attitude. But if you have something on the horizon that is pulling you forward, that is drawing good things out of you, that is inspiring you to, be stronger and do better, and giving you a faith and confidence in the future where none existed before, well then, if I want to mix it up and have a few drinks or maybe more, then it's in the right place. It's
Yeah.
for enjoyment. It's for strengthening relationships with certain people. It's for the laughter. It's for the whatever. And I accept the trade-offs then, but it's a far more conscious behavior, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, than it was previously. And coming from a far more positive place, which puts the whole thing in a far more positive perspective.
Yeah, no, I'd agree 100% with that. Like, my attitude's always been just like fuck it, like this is all bullshit, it's fucking broken, I have no solution to any of this. I might as well just like get my kicks and have fun.
Exactly.
And like one day, whatever, I'll figure it out when one day comes. And now I understand it's like, okay, well, that's obviously not going to work, and that's definitely not a good plan. And now I can build on something, and like all my obstacles are just putting fuel on the fire. And I'll, if I want to have some fun now, and I want to go out and throw a bender with my friends, I'm like, I'm okay with that, because like I have something that will set me straight internally, and like I have a purpose now, and I just gotta like excel at that and fully actualize that purpose. And I did a tweet like a while ago, and it was something like, I was never meant to be shit. I was never meant to have shit, but now all this shit feels like fertilizer. And it's just like,
Nice.
that's just how it's like, that's how I feel now, like kick me down 7 times, I'm gonna get up 8. And that's just the same process of just like refining what I have inside. Or like it's like it's like the sculptures of the, ancient Greece. They would get one big slab of marble, and then they would eliminate everything from the marble until they had that statue of David or what have you. And so I've always kind of had that thought in my head of like, okay, you're like just this unrefined blob that you gotta, force and sculpt into what you want it to be. And that's just like this process that I think life is for me personally. It's I have a certain idea or an ideal of what I can be in the future. And now am I just living up to that standard that I hold to myself? And I've known for a lot of times that I wasn't. But now I feel like I'm getting closer to that, like I'm getting into the concentric circles, and I'm hitting bullseyes now. And the more I do stuff like this, the more I know I'm on the right track. And it's like, oh shit, like, all right, like, it like motivates me. I've been listening to like a lot of Nipsey Hussle lately, and it's just like hustle and motivate and like put in overtime and just like, man, when I don't want to work or I don't want to do something is when I know I should be doing that. And so, yeah, man, like, I don't know, Bitcoin's true north. Like Bitcoin is truth. Like Bitcoin is, and I'm just following the white rabbit, man.
100%. And it's like when those moments, because these conversations are great, we get each other hyped up, and then everyone goes back to their normal life. And 99% of people's normal lives is like kind of a grind, right? Whether it's your work or whatever. And you might enjoy your work, and that certainly makes it a lot better. But if you don't, I think Bitcoin has brought meaning and purpose to so many people's lives. And the impact of that just cannot be overstated, because like those moments where you're tired, or you're bored, or it's just the weight of things and the monotony of things is just too much. And in the back of your head, or even in the front of your head, you're like, what the fuck am I doing this for? Like, is that it? Is that it? Like, I can buy a Porsche, or is that it so I can do this? And I like, obviously, into that space for much of humanity has been something like religion, right? That gives people a higher meaning and a higher purpose to aspire to, or to feed them when they need it, when they need to convince themselves that, maybe convince themselves is the wrong term, but when they need to draw on a higher power, something larger than themselves, perhaps, to kind of keep them going. And I feel like Bitcoin is that for people that were kind of soberly assessing the state of the world and who they were in that world. And that might have been kind of a cold, uncertain, uncomfortable assessment. And Bitcoin, and this will sound obviously insane to people that that aren't hardcore Bitcoiners, but it's just inserted this massive amount of meaning and purpose in people's lives. And the proof is in the pudding, man. The proof is in what you've articulated thus far in this conversation. The proof is in how much people are willing to change in order to get the most juice, the most out of this thing that's emerged in their lives as possible. And like it's not something I've thought a great deal about before, but now that Bitcoin's around, you think it's so important to have meaning and purpose in your life. And children can definitely be that, and I think they are for many people. I think, as I said, religion is and has been, and I'm a little bit more critical of that one. Not that it's not without its benefits. But now that we have a true meaning and purpose that can both benefit us materially, can benefit us, internally, and that in contributing to it, we're able to benefit the world around us, which kind of ticks all the boxes for what you might hope for in something to spend your time on.
Yeah, man, I'd agree with that 100%. Like even for today, before I got on the pod with you, I was kind of beat up, I was kind of tired. I'm like,
Me too,
fuck,
man.
man,
Me
like
too.
shit, like,
I was
all
like,
right,
we should, should I schedule this for tonight? I don't know, man. I'm
yeah,
kind of lazy.
exactly. Exactly. I'm like, all right, like, I did a few push-ups trying to get some juice flowing, and now I'm like fucking hype. Like I swear this happens all the time. I'll like be beat, I'll be like mentally drained, going through the monotonous robotic motions. And then you have these intellectually stimulating Bitcoin conversations about who knows what, but it just like it's enough to just get the juices flowing. And it's like Bitcoin is a great motivator for society when society is, you know, lacking direction and lacking motivation, and everyone's lethargic and apathetic. And here we are, you know, as Bitcoiners, just in this friendly competition to try to stack as much sats as we can, put out the dopest memes, and just spread this message as far and wide as we can, and to, you know, the most people that we can with the most creative and sometimes like inarticulate ways, and just like with this fuck you attitude of like, look, like I'm gonna fucking conquer this world, and you can come with me, or you can sit in your shitty life. And like I really don't care anymore, even though I do care. Like, you know, I think a lot of Bitcoiners are that way, where like we all care, you know, we really do care. And a lot of our friends will probably, you know, be like, oh, I don't fucking care. But like, I think a lot of Bitcoiners really do care about society and about the world. But we also, you know, care about ourselves just as much. And we want to get as much out of life as possible. And, you know, like I'm not willing to sacrifice my life for someone else anymore, even though I fell for that life for a lot of years. Now I realize, like you said, you know, I can do what's best for me and it's best for the world. And that's what Bitcoin is, you know, just keep, you know, keep stacking sats and putting your money where your mouth is. And as Friar Haas says, you know, put your nuts on the table if you want the price to be stable. And it's like, it's just it's truly crazy how this technology quite literally might be the most important technology and invention that man has ever created. And you know, it seems crazy to someone that isn't, you know, fully orange pilled like we are. But once you get to a certain point, it like it hits you, and you're just like, holy shit, like is Bitcoin really this? And once you get that idea of like, wow, is Bitcoin really all this? You start studying, and you want to debunk it, and then you're like, holy shit, like Bitcoin is this. And then, you know, you keep going down the rabbit hole, and you're like, man, you just do the same thing. You're like, man, is it really this? Like you keep, like you said, you have those enlightening moments with Bitcoin where you think you know all you can know, and then you give it 6 months or 3 months or a month, maybe a few weeks, and another realization comes to you, and you're like, oh my God, like I need to stack more sats right now. Like, what can I sell? Cause this shit is insane. Like this literally can't happen. Like this can't be real. It's almost like I think a lot of people have that, like it's too good to be true. And I even have that a lot of times too, because like I'm on this pod right now, and like who am I to be, you know, a Bitcoin thought leader, influencer, whatever the fuck we are. And it's like, who cares, dude? Like you're here, you know, it may be too good to be true, but you're here. Like do it, and fucking roll through it, and go balls deep, and come out even better at the other end. And it's like, you deserve this. I think a lot of, I know personally, I would fall into the camp of like, I don't deserve all this good stuff in my life. And now, you know, in the last couple of months I've realized like, man, like I deserve more. And once you get that idea of like, holy shit, like Bitcoin can offer me more to life than I even thought possible, you just want to grind hard. Like it's, I was like a lazy bum before Bitcoin, you know,
Yeah.
like I was a
Yeah.
surf bum. I grow up in a really nice beach town, and all I wanted to do is just go to the beach, you know, like get in the water, try to chase girls, you know, like catch a, I said it in the, it's like Spicoli, you know, all I need is some tasty waves and a cool buzz and I'm good. Like that's what I was doing basically
Which
my
is
whole life.
nice, which is very
Right?
nice.
It's not hot. Like, it's not a bad life. But now
Yeah.
it's like I can do that and have more. And it's like, wow, like, you know, this really is everything that people want in their life. And they just need to basically put in the time and figure that out for themselves. And, you know, like as corny as it sounds, like Bitcoin can and will quite possibly make all your dreams come true if you're here now and doing, you know, all this that we're doing. And it's just like, it's fucking, Bitcoin has changed my DNA. Like it's so ingrained in my DNA at this point that I sometimes feel like I have a bad time like expressing it to people,
Mm.
because it's like I don't know where they're coming from, and it seems so obvious to me now that when I try to explain to people, you can just tell within like 2 minutes their eyes glass over and they're like, yeah, okay, like shut up, you don't
Right.
get it. And I'm like, well, you don't get it, but I'm trying. I'm trying. Like that's why I love Twitter and doing these podcasts and stuff, because I feel like all this time I'm just refining the message, and soon enough I'll get to a pretty decent point where I can spit the message as simply and as eloquent as I can to people, and the races will be off, and then it's really not me, like I don't move the Bitcoin price. I'm just a humble pleb stacker, and so like
But
once the number goes up,
you're also you're also it. You are the phenomenon. We all are.
right.
Like that. I keep, I've said this a bunch lately, but money is just a tool that allows us to interact, and the characteristics of the money allow, kind of determine what's permitted and what's prohibited, and how we can interact ultimately. And so, like, this is a behavioral revolution, and we're seeing that front and center right now in many of the different ways that individuals are changing, both with regards to themselves and how they're able to interact with others, with the trust dynamics changed as they are, with the geographic dynamics changed as they are. And so, like, I get what you're saying. I'm just me. I don't affect Bitcoin. I don't affect the price, which is, just kind of categorically accurate, unless you're, like fucking Winklevoss or something like that.
Right.
But this is what it's all about. Like, it's not us looking out at the world waiting for it to change.
Mm,
We've just become the change. And so
mm,
we don't, we think we're at the front row seat, like watching the movie. No, we've just entered the movie and waiting for
mm.
other people to do the same. And I think that's really fascinating that's what's happening here. It's kind of, it's almost tricking us in a way. Like, we think we're conscious of everything that's happening because we're so clear-minded now, and we're seeing things with a lot greater clarity in many different ways. But I think the trick is that we're becoming the thing that's changing. And so as a result of that, it's hard to see it in its totality, right? It's hard to kind of step out of the situation and see it, see the full picture. But I totally agree with what you're saying. And when it comes to talking about it with people or trying to explain it to people, I mean, obviously there's an aspect of, you kind of, people have, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Like, it's going to have to
Mhm.
be when people are ready. um, but the same dynamic kind of existed with me and the psychedelic experience when I first came to realize that was available. And then over time, you realize that you can, have a real slick pitch. You can really hit all the points. You can be compelling. You can be accurate. You can, be technical. You can come off really, really well and do the best pitch ever. But the most convincing argument is always going to be who you are, right?
Mm,
Who you become as a result. Like, I can tell people how great the psychedelic experience is, but the most compelling argument is going to be, they're going to admire me in some capacity, right? Like,
mm,
wow. And then the fact that, the psychedelic experience is a part of that, and I let it be known that it's a part of that. That's what I think is the most compelling sales pitch, as it were, for this or for Bitcoin and stuff. Not like yammering on about whatever aspect of it. It's like, okay, show me, like, who have you become as a result of engaging in these things. And that's part of the reason. And I don't give advice or anything like that, but when I'm asked, like what's a nice sentiment to share, I guess, um, I always just refer to kind of like, be genuine and express yourself, and or don't be afraid to express yourself. And it does, like, I think a lot of people have reservations or had reservations about that before. And I think having learned about Bitcoin and interacting with it, people are gaining more confidence, to think like, no, fuck no, I was actually seeing the world clearly. Like, I actually was
mm,
right. I wasn't crazy. I still have a lot to learn, and there's always blind spots, but I kind of know what the fuck is going on. And I kind of know how it could be better. And so, yeah,
right.
fuck yeah, I'm going to express myself. But as you referenced a few minutes ago, like, Bitcoiners seem to me to have most people I interact with, they just seem to have good hearts. And so if you're the type of person who has a good heart, and you're genuine and you commit to being genuine, then just express yourself. And yeah, you'll be wrong sometimes and people will criticize you sometimes, but that's the process of learning, and it's the process of showing people what constitutes who you are. So if they're at all kind of intrigued by who you are, like, wow, that guy's like doing all right, he's healthy, he has good relationships, he's a happy person, he's whatever, then then they'll also know that, oh shit, like that dude's really into Bitcoin, or that dude's really into psychedelics. So like, I wonder how why those are integrated into his life, and maybe that's potentially partially responsible for the person he is. And of course, that is the way it is. So
Yeah.
I just think, when people talk about like, oh, like I'm so into Bitcoin, but I don't know, like, should I write articles? Should I start a podcast? Should I do this? Should I do that? What I usually say is like, fuck yeah, we'll do it all. We'll do it comes most naturally, and just get it out there. Like, I know there's a fuckload of Bitcoin podcasts right now, but there can't be too many, because the way that, Joe over here speaks and expresses himself is not going to resonate with, the 50-year-old exec at a tech company, but it might resonate with the 12-year-old skateboarder, like at the skate park. Everyone communicates in different ways, and we're not that unique that we could even possibly communicate in a way that wouldn't resonate with a huge other group of people, because we all come up in this soup of culture together, and like our differences is what allows us to communicate more effectively with other people.
No, dude, yeah, you're 100% right. And it's like I'm a Bitcoin podcaster now. And
I heard.
yeah, and I look at, and I'm like, I think that's fucking hilarious, because I can vividly remember thinking to myself like I don't want to start a podcast. Like, what the fuck? Like, there's so many podcasts. Like, let's not start another podcast. And then me and Nick basically got volunteered to start one, and we like look at each other and we're like, all right, well, we can give it a go for one episode, and we'll probably bomb it, but like, who gives a fuck? We'll give one a chance. And now we're, I don't know, like 3-4 months into it, and me and Nick have such a fun time. And I totally agree with you. There's what, 7.8 plus billion people in the world, so there literally isn't enough podcasts for everyone, because like you say, everyone has a different voice, a different perspective. And even like more in detail, people talk in different slang, and people are into different things. And so you definitely have to hit people where it resonates with them. You have to try to understand their self-interest, and try to basically like pique their interest and realize that, look, this will benefit your life. And it's like you said with the psychedelic experience, like, you can talk about it until you're blue in the face, but until you're experienced and you've done it for yourself, then you don't really know. And so like, I can try to explain to you, all my trips, well, not all of them, but like, I've written some of them down, and I can try to explain to you in as much detail as possible, but it's not going to be the same as you actually experiencing this, and you having that personal experience of it fucking blasting your senses, and you viewing the world in a totally different way. And so the same with Bitcoin. It's you kind of have to like buy Bitcoin to understand Bitcoin. And even though we kind of, it's best practice to tell people, like, understand Bitcoin as much as possible, understand what you're buying, understand what you're getting yourself into. But you kind of just have to buy it and learn on the job, and experience it firsthand. And as you experience this, like, your behavior starts changing. And if it catches your mental, like, your interest, and you're basically just like captures your brain, then you're going to eventually come out a Bitcoiner. It'll take time. It might take you a long time. You might get caught in shit coins. You might get completely wrecked, and it scares you away. But at a certain point, like, the fire will get lit, and it's just like the dynamite will explode, and it just, you won't look at the world the same. And like, back to relating that to psychedelics, like, I remember the first time I did them, and I would eat just like a little bit of mushrooms, and it wouldn't really do much. I kind of, it'd be like, oh, that was a cool little, like, cool little experience, like, that was fun. And then I kind of got more into like Terrence McKenna, and I would do like heroic journeys and heroic doses. And after those ones, I'm like, Yeah, like what the fuck is life, bro? Like what like it's just you're just so blown away when you fucking come back to like your senses and you basically go fucking crazy and you just like nothing's ever the same and there was a time where it scared me and I think there's a time at times I get scared of the Bitcoin and what the possibilities of it are and the effects that it might have on my life and my family's life and now it's just like okay like you're walking the path and there's no such thing as a smooth life like you'll make it through and just keep doing what you do and you're going to get ridiculed and people are going to make fun of you or what have you and you might be called an idiot but like express your truth like it's about what's right for you and you have a perspective and you're a unique being and all that good stuff and like express it like I think for a while not expressing my truth and not expressing my character and trying to hide it and damp it and trying to fit in with the norm and like making sure I don't rock the boat too much. It literally almost basically killed me. Like I think once I hit my lowest point, which was basically right when I got into Bitcoin. It's funny how my life kind of adds up like that, where my lowest points in my life when I didn't really know it then, but in hindsight, I can look back and be like, yeah, my lowest points in my life were when I was getting into Bitcoin and just having, that like rock bottom to stand on. I could look up and be like, okay, there's the highs and here's the lows. And now let's work my way up this mountain and make myself a better person. And just having that realization and that clarity in myself is enough to be just like gung ho about this all and just
Yeah.
not taking it for granted and just fucking enjoying it as much as possible.
And dude, that's exactly why I started kind of I was never really fully joking about it because I know exactly what you're talking about. And I've been saying for a while now that, obviously there's like mental health crisis around the world and, in society today. There's a lot of depression, anxiety, mood disorders, hopelessness, all the things that you might expect if you're seeing the world through the lens of kind of a failing civilization, right? Where, opportunities are diminishing and, things are looking kind of bleak. You would kind of expect that sort of sentiment to prevail in people's minds. Um, and there's some really cool things happening to try to combat that. Like I'm really tuned into what organizations like MAPS are doing, and they're doing MDMA assisted psychotherapy. And there's been a psychedelic renaissance over the last 20 years. Various universities have kickstarted the studies on it. There's been a lot of donations and money flowing into the space to fund this research. There's going to be commercialization of this stuff in the next few years, which is all great. And I think those, as we've been discussing, those are tremendous tools for, pausing your kind of perspective on life, expanding your perspective, or at the very least, for a period of time, seeing things from a different perspective, perhaps a more clear, truthful perspective, and then coming down and that helping to kickstart the therapeutic process. But I think, man, and if I'm a therapist, if I'm a psychotherapist, and I'm interested in that space, but if I was in that role, in addition to those techniques and those therapies, I think a financial education centered around what Bitcoin represents is a reasonable thing to include in that, because like you send someone packing back out into the world after you have your session with them. And the biggest part of, what they have to contend with is fucking making it in the world, surviving,
Yep.
roof over your
Yep.
head, work and all that
Yep.
kind of shit. Like it's great to have, the introspective, sensitive conversation with your therapist while you're receiving the therapy, but then you get kicked back out into you're on the subway, it's noisy and crazy and there's people everywhere. And having a tool, or at least a kind of a mental understanding or framework around that aspect of things and not just the internal, I think could be incredibly beneficial for people. And like we were saying earlier, giving them, uh, subduing or diluting to a certain degree the hopelessness by inserting something that seems like it may help them operate more effectively in the world, kind of back them up and provide hope that maybe things can change in a more positive way. And, especially with related to the psychedelic experience, I think it's fair to say that's a very kind of untethering experience.
Hmm.
You let go. That's one of the
Yeah.
primary, things that are required to really get the most out of that experience. You have to let
Hmm.
go of so many things. And if you don't have something to pull you back down and ground you, then I'm sure we've both come across a lot of people that just end up kind of
Yep.
staying
Yep.
in that area because it's a if you don't see much in the other world, it's a kind of a nice place to hang out, I guess. But I think Bitcoin represents that, like, it's kind of a mirror, but it's almost the antithesis in that it's the representation of that in the quote unquote physical world that just allows you to ground yourself. And so much is made of integrating these experiences when you come out of them, right? The psychedelic experience
Yep.
really kind of reassessing things and unpacking a lot of the
Yep.
insights you might have had and turning it into improvements in your material life. I really think Bitcoin is such a powerful tool for grounding people back in the material world, and again, being that foundation for building on top of, for building, constructing a healthier, better, more optimistic life for oneself. Where that tool may have not been readily apparent or even available at all prior to that.
Dude, I'd agree with you. That's beautiful to me. Like, I I I would definitely, I would definitely go to that therapist if there was one. Like I've always been like a solo psychonaut. Like my friends don't even do psychedelics really like I do. They kind of do them as more like a party drug.
Yeah.
And I've always done it more in like the shamanic sense of like, I'm taking these hallucinogens to learn something about myself and reality. Like back to what I said about philosophy.
Right.
I was always looking for the nature of reality, and so that's why I, at a certain point in my adulthood, seeked psychedelics because I was like, well, I haven't found the answer yet. Maybe these can help me find that answer, and they just give you more questions, and so you can get lost in it, and you do need something to tether you back into the real world. And I can only guess that if I hadn't found Bitcoin at the exact moment that I did, I could have definitely been one of those lost, angry people. And it's like a saying that Ram Dass said. He says, it's hard to become enlightened and then come back and dig ditches. And
Right. Right.
so like it's it's definitely a rude awakening when you have these cosmic orgasms on psychedelic and then you're like, man, like there's so much to life, and how do I bring that back into my normal life? And then you come back and you're just living a shitty existence, and you don't have anything going for you, and you're like, you're very confused at how you can assimilate the two. And then I don't know, it sounds so corny to me, but then you have Bitcoin, and you just start like, you start slowly but surely changing your life over it. And it's like the same thing with psychedelics. It wasn't one psychedelic trip that just like made me become enlightened or what have you, or even if this is enlightenment, whatever. It's like,
Mhm.
one experience after another is enough to slowly start cracking open the egg inside of you, and you just start to look at the world differently, and you start to eliminate some of these bad perspectives, and you can basically fix yourself. But if there was someone to guide you on all this stuff, it would certainly make it a lot easier for people that aren't as how would you say, like, individuals or self like, I'm really bad at authority, like I'm really bad with authority figures, and it probably has to do with some of my upbringing. But like, I'm so bad when people tell me what to do. So even if someone was to tell me like this is the right way to do it, and I'll guide your hand, I'd probably be like, yeah, like let me do it on myself, and then I'll come back to you when I need help. Like,
Yeah.
I'm starting to realize that I'm really bad at asking for help. And so but other people aren't like me. And so if they did have that facility to get cosmic and to like have ego death and all that good stuff, and then come back to reality, and have a like a plan, like a 12-step plan to fixing their life, including with different psychedelic drugs. It might not be for everyone, but I think a lot of people could use it, because you before you do psychedelics, like, you think the world is a certain way and you can't really look outside of your own perspectives on life, and then you do them, and sometimes you're like looking at too many perspectives, and you're like, which way is up and which way is down, and like Bitcoin is true north. Like, it gives you a certain way to live your life, and if you're willing to abide by it, then it's going to prosper. Like, you're going to prosper, because like we it's done it for us. And like, I'm convinced this isn't over. This has been a rough bear market for us all, and you kind of get and you get like exhausted, and you get like you put today, like the hodl fatigue, where you're just like, you're going through the motions, and the price is going up and then it's going down, and you're like, oh shit, man, like fucking do something. It's like that meme of like the little fucking dude poking the Bitcoin
Yeah,
logo,
yeah.
like, do something, man, like do something. But like, like, I'm blessed. I feel so blessed for this opportunity, because if if Bitcoin took off like I thought it would have in November 17 when I got in, like, I was convinced too within like 2-3 weeks, like, oh, we're going to 50K, like, let's fucking go. But like, if that would have happened, I don't think I would have been like this adamant or this diehard, because like I wouldn't have had the trials and the tribulations, and basically, and further, like, I'd have less sats. And so now I realize, like, man, this has been a blessing for us all, and personally in my life. And it's just like, this is an amazing drug. Like, Bitcoin's an amazing drug.
Well, like you said, man, like the hero's journey, right? You kind of got to earn your stripes.
Yeah,
If it was so easy, you probably wouldn't be shaped by it as much as you were. And I
crazy.
think we'll look back on this period and like we'll reminisce about this period, I guess.
In
Once
my day.
yeah, like, this when this thing was so small that we could all mix it up on Twitter and talk to each other
Yeah,
on podcasts and stuff. Those days, I don't think they'll be around for that much longer, because this will be such a big mainstream thing that our little corner of the internet where all the weirdos get together and talk about what this is going to be like in the future. Well, someday that future is going to be here, and we're not, of course there'll always be, I'm sure, things to talk about, but it won't be such a probably tight knit and ultimately small community, right? And so, as much as everyone wants to be richer, I guess, by the price going up, and it's exciting when that's happening. I kind of like I kind of like still being under the surface. I kind of like everyone still counting it out. I kind of like still being the black sheep, talking about this stuff, because it won't be as cool later, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It won't, like, yeah, it'll just be a normal mainstream thing. Like, nobody's cool for repping the internet these days. Like,
yeah,
oh, guys, you know what the internet's going to be
yeah,
like? It's like, yeah, bro, we use it all the time. Like, who
yeah,
cares? Um, but and one of the things you mentioned this about how Bitcoin has, and starting the podcast is obviously a huge example of this, but it's caused you to express yourself more. And I think Twitter is kind of like that as well. Like, people come in, they're like, hey, what's going on here? Like, these guys are talking about Bitcoin. Oh, that guy's rude, or oh, that guy's
yeah,
smart, or this girl is interesting, and whatever's going on. And then you slowly but surely start to express yourself more. And I remember I've always been down for like a good conversation on a variety of topics that interested me. But I was walking with my aunt, 3-4 years ago, and just the kind of the way my life had gone, the work I was doing. I was working in Shanghai at the time, and once you have a professional career, the vast majority of your time is talking about and doing that shit, right? And when you're not doing that, you pretty much just want to go out for dinner or drinks with a few close friends, or stay at home and do some mindless, like, TV watching or something.
yeah.
If you've kind of maxed out your Bitcoin podcast quota for the day. But I told her when we were hiking, she was like, how are you feeling lately? And the way I articulated was like, I feel so contained.
Hmm.
And she was like, well, that's a weird thing to say. And I was like, yeah, I know it's a weird thing to say, but you asked me how I felt, and that's genuinely how I feel. I feel contained. And she was like, what do you mean? And I said, like, I just feel like there's so much I want to talk about, express, be involved in. And, just by virtue of living a normal life, I'm not really able to do that to the extent that I would like to. And there's nothing special about that for me, I don't think. I mean, some people have broader, more deep or passionate interests than others, but I think everybody is forced into such a narrow tunnel in order to construct a life for themselves or get by in this world, that all the other things that they want to explore, express, etc., get pushed to the sideline. And I think social media is probably an example of that to some degree, in that, like, when you give people an ability to express themselves, boy, do they fucking do it. Now, most of it might be ass pictures and cat videos, which I fully support, by the way. But I think, if anything, that kind of shows, like, there's this tremendous yearning for self-expression, and for
Hmm.
people to yeah, to take all this stuff that torrent and stream of thoughts that's running through all of our heads on a daily basis, to get it out. And all the better if you can focus it on things that that genuinely set you on fire, where you don't have to
Hmm.
think about how you're going to express it. You're just like, you feel that kind of need, and you just let it rip, and somehow it comes out. And I guess sometimes it's more coherent than others, but and that's a beautiful thing. Like, talking about therapeutic things, like, that is therapeutic in itself, being and allowing yourself to engage in your passion and your interests and your curiosity and your hopes and dreams, and expressing that, like, that is incredibly therapeutic. Not keeping it all to yourself anymore, not thinking that you can't express it for fear of ridicule or backlash or canceling or getting fired, like, actually being able to do that. And that's one of the things that excites me the most about Bitcoin's development. Like, in whatever it is, 2, 5, 10 years, when all these people that we're hanging around with now on Twitter and stuff, when they're capitalized, when they have that freedom, when they're not beholden to the company or the job or whatever anymore, how, like, the different ways in which and degree to which they're going to be expressing themselves, like, and I just it's going to be awesome. Like, I can't wait for people to have and use that level of freedom.
Oh, dude, I agree 100%. And what you said about, the whole journey, like that was my journey. I remember when I first got on Twitter, I didn't say anything really. I'd throw a couple jokes here and there. I'd just follow and like things. And then over, the couple of years, just like shit posting was therapeutic, where, like, I can joke around on the internet, and I can talk about what I want in life, and I can, like, make fun of people or go head to head with people, go toe to toe with them and hold my own. And it gives you some sense of, like, personal confidence or what have you, but it's really just like no longer holding back, because I know a lot of times with my friends, the conversations that I have are very, superficial or skin deep. And
Yeah.
over time, it gets to you. But once you're on the internet and you find your little community, your little niche, you can go as deep as you want to. And personally, every conversation that I have with Bitcoiners, I always come out with a new perspective, or it always makes me think about something, or it makes me just feel better about myself, because I can hold a conversation with such smart people, and I'm like, okay, like, I'm not an idiot. Like, okay, like, I'm smarter than I give myself credit. And like, now like you said earlier, my friends have noticed a change in me recently when I hang out with them. They're like, wow, like, you're a lot more confident, like, you hold yourself differently, like, I can tell that something's changed in you. And I'm like, fuck yeah, it has, like, I can tell you what it was, but you're not going to listen because, I've already been telling you what it is. And, like, yeah, back to, the podcast. Like, I you know I didn't want to do a podcast, and now I'm doing Bitcoin kindergarten with Nick. And it's just, we just want to help noobs get into the space, and we're trying to help them avoid like all our mistakes, and now we have like a community of all our friends over there that are sharing their experiences, and it's just so fucking dope to be a part of it, because like, you know, right now we don't have very many new people in the space, and it's just like our friends.
Yeah.
But like in time, you know, we'll actually be able to help people, and we've helped a few people, and it feels good to be like, all right, you know, boys, like let's create a fucking new coiner today. And you know, they come with their questions, and by the end of it, they're like, holy shit, like I need to stack some sats, you know, like I need to be buying Bitcoin. Like, what am I doing with my life? And you know, just that self-expression of, or maybe not even self-expression, just being heard. Because a lot of times in life, in our everyday life, you know, you tell people your true feelings or whatever, your perspective on things, and it just flows over them, and you don't get that acknowledgement that you want. And on the internet, at least in our little corner of Twitter and Telegram and all that, you know, you can say your jokes and you can say your perspective, and people will respond to it if it's good, you know. And so that's like, it's part of the game, you know, the dopamine game, where like you just keep trying to create dope memes, and you know, like I don't have much insights into this, but like, you know, you just try to spread it in a way that makes people laugh or makes people think about it, and it just helps you in your personal life. Like, it is therapeutic, and I never thought about that until you just brought it up in that sense of like, wow, maybe shit posting with all my friends kind of helped me, you know, like as weird as it sounds, you know, like shit posting's the way, like
Yeah. But man, like I think you hit the nail on the head where once you dip your toes in, you start expressing yourself, and you realize that first of all, things are probably more simple than you had thought. Like, yes,
100.
you have to study a number of different disciplines, but the truth emerges as something that maybe, as you were saying about the sculpture earlier, emerges from taking things away rather than
Mm,
adding, so much complexity all the time. But one of the things that's so fascinating about Twitter and being amongst the people having this global conversation, and also kind of points to the fact that Bitcoin really is kind of creeping out of its niche corner of the internet, is like a lot of people come into the space now, whether they're from the gold community, the political community. Like I spoke to um, political party leader in Canada who was only 1% of the vote away from being the leader of the Conservative Party, which is basically like the Republicans in the U.S. And I had a conversation with him on my podcast, and like we're reaching out and we're having conversations with people, kind of, I don't know how to characterize them, but unique, successful people,
mm,
or influential or prominent people in a variety of different categories, because this this Bitcoin argument is kind of knocking on their front door. It's like it's come to their doorstep, and they open the door to find that it's a bunch of wacky Bitcoiners that are at the door saying, let's throw down on, this economic argument. Let's throw down on this political argument. Let's throw down on this, social argument, or whatever it is. And the quality of the discourse speaks for itself. Like somehow, you cast your rod in this pool of Bitcoiners, and there's going to be a couple that pop up that are going to be able to have that dialogue with pretty much anybody in any category or industry or area of expertise in the world, like in a really high quality level. And that's amazing. And I guess it just again speaks to the gravity that, all sorts of different people are being brought into this, and they're being motivated and inspired and incentivized to up their game, to think with the utmost clarity, to refine how they articulate themselves so they can be involved in these conversations. And it really seems, especially this year, I guess a little later last year too, but there just seems to be a wave forming of, you mentioned memes and people expressing themselves, like basically expression in all forms: memes, podcasts, writing, TV, like longer form video, whatever, of this this message, this subject matter, this way of thinking, just like about to, it keeps pushing out, and it seems to really be swelling.
Oh yeah, dude. Like you just planted an image in my mind of like a tidal wave just like growing, slowly growing. And I it's gonna crash on the shores of everyone soon. And we're just refining that message. And me and Nick and like Coin Icarus and like Joe Rogers have been talking a lot, and we'll be just saying like, man, like you newer people coming into the space are so lucky because you guys have all these resources that we didn't have, and if only we had those resources when we got in, our journey would have been that much easier. But like I wouldn't take back how we've gotten here, but I agree with you 100%. Like being able to go toe to toe with smart people or quote unquote authorities that have
Right.
degrees and all these accolades, and we're just fucking anon shit posters on Twitter, and we're able to hold our own in economic discourses, or just like talking with some of our friends that are really well off, and they have a lot going for themselves, and you're like, okay, well, like I'm no different than that guy, and I can get to that point too. And then you're like, all right, like that's just fuel in the fire to keep it going. And I next year, it'll probably be next year, but by this time next year, man, like all the memes and all the content, or this Bitcoin tidal wave that's about to freaking take over the world, like people are going to have a hard time ignoring us at that point, especially when number goes up, and we all have money like you're saying, or we all have our own little like uh basically like our own little treasures of what we can do, and we can put our energies in what we want. And the more that we can stop being a part of the grind, that things are going to start to explode. And we're like, it's just that like just the wick about to hit the dynamite, and we're just at that lull right now where you know we're basically like in very much some respects like the laughing stocks of the whole world. And then we look at each other and we're like, dude, like all these people are idiots. Like it'll just take them a little time to understand it, and in time they'll get it. And like the fact that we have all our little Bitcoin tribes and all our friends that are just refining the message, and then not only that, but bigging each other up. Like that's what I love the most about all our friends is if you do something dope, people will tell you and they'll back you up, and they'll fucking push you harder than you probably push yourself. And that just is inspiring enough to be like, okay, like I'm a part of this tidal wave that's about to freaking take over the world. And like Bitcoin's like, we're fucking out ya, like we're here, and we're loud and we're obnoxious, and like we're not afraid to tackle anyone, or just like show our little memes. We're basically like Mormons knocking on people's doors, like can I interest you in some Bitcoin, sir? Like we like don't care. We're so convinced in our message that we'll spread it any way we can. And it's just that it's like thousand little steps that are going to take us over that mountain. And just every set counts, and every refinement of the message counts. And just, man, the next wave of Bitcoiners that come in are going to have just a huge knowledge base to be even better Bitcoiners. And like Bitcoin's a positive feedback loop, and the more we have out there, and the more new Bitcoiners that come in, the more we just like slingshot ourselves forward. And in time, like the shit's gonna pop, and you won't be able to ignore it. And I personally, like, I think we're kind of already there. We only need a few more people for it to really be unstoppable, in my opinion. And like I have a lot of like dystopian views of what the future will be, but I have this just like this little beacon of light, and it's Bitcoin. And I think we're just Bitcoiners will just freaking like explode all our expectations, and be what's the saying, like it gets darkest before it gets light. And so
It's always darkest before the dawn.
yeah, there it is. And so like it's probably going to get pretty bad And but at the end of the day, like I'm convinced in in like a fairy tale type way that like, or like a TV sitcom type way that like, all right, in an hour all this shit's gonna go to hell, but at the very end of the hour, like everything's gonna wrap up nicely, and we'll be good to go. Like life's one big movie, and so by the end of the day, we'll be good.
It'll be a nice
And
heartwarming message at the
yeah,
end.
yeah, exactly. And that's like, my optimistic, Hollywood saturated brain where I'm just like convinced in the optimism that, we'll make it through. Like I believe in humanity, and I believe that humans, no matter what, are resilient and adaptable. And, people are definitely confused, and they think that what they're trying to do is the solution currently, like a lot of, these socialist communist people. And I remember when I was kind of, swayed by those ideas too, of like the collective whole, like all you need is love, and love for your neighbor, and we can get through it together.
Yeah.
And now it's like, yeah, like we can do all that, but only if you freaking help yourself, like God helps those who help themselves. And I'm not even the most religious person, but I think that there's a lot of wisdom in religious teachings, and in scriptures and all that. And, it's just like there's so much ancient knowledge that we have forgotten, and that we have cliched, and that we have ignored, and that we fight. And there, it's been around for a long time for a reason, because humanity and human nature hasn't changed very much. And it's just telling you about yourself. And at the very end of the day, like team human will prevail. And, like Bitcoin fixes this. Like
Dude, I'm so, I have so much anticipation for what will all look like just as soon as the next halving, 4 years from
yeah.
now, because you've been articulating this whole conversation, the changes you've experienced in the last 2.5 years, and it just the world will, I think, will change so much in that time, and we'll be both inspired and kind of forced to change with it. And even after all this that we're talking about, like realizing that we can see things with greater clarity perhaps than before, and that we're not crazy, and that we actually can hold our own with other people that articulate their clarity about a given thing. It's still, again, back to that point about having it be so difficult, if not to see, but to really comprehend when you're in the middle of it. Like this
Mhm.
period, when it's written about 50 to 100 years from now, it'll seem, the progression will seem so obvious, right? Like, oh, of course, the next thing to happen was
Yeah.
X. But even now, and so one of the things I try to like remind myself is to actually, well, continue to remind myself to believe in my clarity. Like,
Mm.
believe in what you see. Do you see things on the horizon, whether they be good or bad? Okay. Like, act as though you believe that to be true. Like, prepare for X or build for Y, or, you know, lean into that, rather than, just being, not that I think most people are not solely observers, but believe in your perspective, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. It's like, you have the sight now, as it were, and so use it.
Oof.
Use it to better plan and prepare for things that are coming, both on the upside and the downside. So capitalizing on opportunities and trying to mitigate negative circumstances, I guess.
Damn, John, I resonated with that so much, because I've definitely been having that same realization personally of, like you said, you have the vision now. I was listening to Jesus Christ Superstar today, and it had at the very end, it's like John 9:41, and I'm gonna butcher the quote, but someone can look it up, and it said something like, because you said you were blind, you didn't sin, but now that you say you can see, like you're accountable for it. And so I've been having that realization in my own life where it's like, okay, you say you understand now. And so just the fact that you're saying that, you have to hold yourself accountable to it, because if you're right, then the world's going to be different. And so are you basically like how convinced are you of your own argument, and how much do you
Exactly.
believe in yourself, and how much do you believe in what you've been telling other people? Because, basically you don't want to be like the Bitcoin LARP where you're like saying all this stuff and you only half believe it. And there's a point where you're just like kind of faking it till you make it. But now I feel like I'm so convinced in our own argument that I'm starting to like, even like for a moment, was doubt myself. I'm like, man, am I really this convinced? Am I really this right about it? Do I really believe this? And now I'm like, yeah, I'm like I'm there, and quit doubting yourself, and realize that if you are this right, shit's gonna change, and you got to be ready for it. And that goes back to like changing my diet and working out more, and basically like dropping a lot of loser think, and just becoming the best person I can be, and actually actualizing myself so that I'm ready for what's to come. Because I believe the roller coaster is about to come, and there's parts of me that doubt if I can really hold on the whole ride, and then the other parts of me is like, stop being a little bitch, like you got this shit, like you're fucking gonna handle this shit, let's go, like go do some sprints, go do some push-ups, like eat more steak, cut out the sugar, no more soda, so like I'm like becoming my own drill instructor over here of like, do you want to deserve this? Like, well, fucking act like it. And
Yeah.
so, like, yeah, I agree with you 100%. I've been realizing that in my own life. And, just like being here with you on this pod is one of those like affirmations that like dog, like you're doing it right, and fucking just keep going and keep pushing yourself, and like fucking just keep studying, and Bitcoin's the way, and all your friends over here on the internet have shown you the way, and just like keep it up, and like shouts out to all the Bitcoiners out there.
100%, man. I think you put it really well. We're like, it's fine to get confirmation on Twitter and get likes and reshares and, oh, people like my thinking and stuff, and, oh, I was right about that. But like, act as though you believe what you're
Mhm.
saying,
Exactly.
and that's the far harder piece, because
Yep.
that's a piece that requires your energy, that's a piece that requires your dedication, that's a piece that requires you to do the stuff you don't want to do because you
Mhm.
know that you have to and you should do it. And it's far easier to abdicate that and just go for the dopamine hit of being like intellectually right.
Yep.
But like, do you want to be that level of right, or do you want to be, yeah, do you believe in yourself enough to motivate action? And I think the COVID stuff, in the beginning of this year, like, we were all kind of LARPing in the Bitcoin space for
Yep.
a long time. Not to be too harsh on us, but we see the writing on the wall. We see how this ends. We talk about it all the time. We looked for historical references. Like, we're seeing what's unfolding with a high degree of clarity. But
Mhm.
how many of us were ready for what happened? And I don't
Yeah.
just mean like your food supply stocked up, but like,
Yeah.
were you ready for things to devolve? And whether we're talking about economic, or whether we're talking about, government encroachment, or these types of things, like, were you as prepared or ready as you wanted to be? Had you been
Mhm.
putting stuff off? And like, the answer for most people is probably yes. And
Mhm.
so, hopefully, that's just, that's an event that can cause us to reflect a little bit on that. If and I guess, yeah, as you said, trust ourselves at the end of the day. Like, you've gotten this far, and you've been kind of, your clarity has been proven valid when perhaps previously you thought it wasn't. That's wonderful. Now, do you actually, like, how much do you actually believe that, and how
Yeah.
how much is that reflected in your actions? And that's a constant dance, right? Every day, like, you've got to continue figuring that out and determine. But it's definitely, something that I'm all over in my head, and try to help use to orient the things that I give my time to, or pursue, or devote my resources to, etc.
No, yeah, I agree. And you reminded me of a Terrence McKenna quote where he says, you gotta jump into the abyss and realize that at the bottom's a bed of feathers. And I say that because it's like, you know, you have to take the leap. And to take that leap, you have to be prepared, or you have to have some preparation. And yeah, like personally, I could have handled a lot of things better during this COVID time, but I took the time that we had and I bettered myself and I did as much as I could within in my, own little bubble
Hmm.
to be the best that I can. And, there was things that I could have done better, but I also feel, like I was pretty prepared as much as I possibly could with the resources that I had.
Yeah.
And so the next time around, I'll be better prepared, and I'll be even in a better place to make even more moves. And so, like, yeah, man, 100%. Like, do you believe what you say, or are you just kind of parroting it because it feels good? And there is, it's a fine line, because you might think that you believe what you say, but when the shit hits the fan, are you ready to die for what you believe, or are you just gonna say that? And like, I've been joking about that for a while. Like, I'm not like willing to die for my sats, but like, I think I'm willing to die for the idea of Bitcoin, which is like a big, big thing for me to deal with, because, like, I'm a fan of living. I love life, and I don't want to go out yet. I don't think I'm ready to go out yet. And, but what, like, if you had a choice of, like, if you could go right now and you'd usher in everything that Bitcoin promises, like, would you do it? And, for a while I probably would say, like, no, fuck that, like, I'm trying to live. But now, like, if it was 100% guaranteed, and, I could guarantee that, then hell yeah, like, that's an easy one for me, because it's, like, as a man, any great man in the history of things, that's what we do. We sacrifice for the ones we love, and, we put down our necks for the things that we stand for. And, like, who am I to think that I'm any better than any of the great people that we've ever known and that we respect in history? And if Bitcoin does what we think it's going to do, then, that's like a noble cause. But I think, like, the next go around at this, we're going to be even more prepared, and we're going to be that much stronger. And what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And a lot of us are out here just getting better. It's just like compounding behaviors and compounding interest. And the, what one day, if we think it's gonna happen, what happens, we'll look back at this time and we'll laugh and be like, God damn, like, I was so naive and I was such a little kid, and look at me now, like, look at what I've done. And just like, dog, it's just so dope to be here having these conversations. It's so dope to refine my skill sets and build that inner strength, and, you know become a Bitcoiner. Like, we're not born Bitcoiners. One day, maybe, some of us have children and they're being born today as Bitcoiners, and those ones are the lucky ones. But,
That
like,
I know.
right,
Yeah.
but for the most part, like, we have to forge ourselves to become Bitcoiners. We have to go through the fire and become a Bitcoiner. And that's probably the majority of us, is we have to become Bitcoiners, whereas one day people will just be born Bitcoiners, and their life will just be better, and they'll take it for granted. And, it'll be boring then. And as contrarian Bitcoiners as we are, like, maybe then we'll be those, like, hipster Bitcoiners, like, yeah, I remember when Bitcoin was cool, all the outcasts on the internet. We were. So dope. But, like, it I think it's just, if Bitcoin does what we think it's gonna do, then this is gonna be just a far go nightmare. It's like, wow, we were savages. We were barbaric back then. Like, how could they have ever lived in those times with this fiat money and these paper dollars? Like, what kind of idiot believes paper is money, and not realizing that, you can turn energy into the hardest currency you've ever known? And so, in time, it'll be simple. But right now, we're just ahead of the curve, and we just have to be diligent, persistent in the message.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. I Yeah, I tend to think we're just going to be like, or whoever in the future is going to be like Jedis looking back on us like, what savages they were, like before the fall, they were really, just a couple of apes,
Yeah.
throwing their shit around basically, in comparison. But yeah, it's a beautiful sentiment, man. And it's amazing how what we're dancing around here in Bitcoin inspires, of course, there's such a huge component of individual self-serving incentives, but the beauty of it is that that actually feeds the incentive of the system as well. And there are these very, either religious or quasi-religious undertones of duty and sacrifice that emerge. And I'm not saying that everyone listening to this has felt those and has this, uh, that's a strong pull for them. But once you get deep enough, what this thing appears to represent in terms of potential and impact, it kind of forces you to think in those terms, like both in terms of stewardship, in terms of duty, and if not the ultimate sacrifice, but sacrificing, as you were saying, perhaps immediate or gratification or pleasure in order to, yes, get the most out of it, but also kind of some odd sense of being worthy to hold it, to being worthy of interacting with it. And I know that sounds insane to people that aren't at the depths of the rabbit hole like you and I, but that just seems to be the case. And as you said, we'll have to wait and see what it's like to look back on ourselves now, whether we laugh at ourselves for, like, we'll look back, me and you will have this conversation in 20 years, be like, yeah, we really overdid it there. Like maybe we got a little carried away with things back then. Everything turned out okay, but maybe we got a bit carried away. Or maybe we'll look back and laugh and be like, you boys didn't even see the main part of this thing. You didn't even see the whole picture. So I don't know, man. This has been fucking awesome conversation. Great to connect with you. Have we been sufficiently cosmic? Is there anything else we need to touch on?
I mean, I think so. I don't know. You might have to go to the Twitter sphere for that one. But yeah, I just wanted to add that like what you said on Bitcoiners, I believe that a lot of Bitcoiners are like leaders, in their own right. And at least the crop that we have now are just a bunch of leaders in they just haven't been actualized yet. We've just haven't had the opportunity to lead, and like here we are. And this next 4 years, this next 8 years is gonna be fucking dope to watch everyone go spread that message and fucking slay the world. And here we are.
Totally, man. And I'm just looking at Twitter now. I think I'll leave it because it's been such a great conversation. I don't want to start introducing Twitter comments at this point.
All right.
But man, like I said, this has been awesome. It's I had been, just based on our really kind of limited interactions on Twitter, I had been anxiously anticipating and looking forward to this conversation, and it definitely delivered, man. So I appreciate the time.
Dude, thank you. I'm honored and I appreciate it. And hey, back at you, bro. I'm just glad to be here talking with you, man.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll do it again soon, man.
Hey, I'm with it. Let's go.
Take care, brother.